Welcome to God is a Good Father Devotions. Today we'll take a look at Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. August, my husband and I and a guide floated the middle fork of the Salmon River. That's behind me. That's in the Frank Church Wilderness area, in the middle of nowhere, and it's beautiful. Our guide wore an Indiana Jones hat, polarized sunglasses, and had an incredible sense of humor. His reflexes were sharp, and we ping-ponged from rock to rock on the middle fork of the Salmon River, oftentimes in Class 4 waters. And he was such an excellent oarsman that he would turn the boat around so the water wouldn't cascade over our heads and soak us, even though we were wearing protective gear. Despite the adventure, my heart twisted when I spotted smoke in front of the raft. I had just read Norman Maclean's Young Men in Fire for the third time, and it still haunted me about the Mann Gulch Fire of 1949, where only 3 smokejumpers survived. We were in a group of 7 guides and 24 passengers. And the guides discussed the safety of the trip as the smoke thickened and a helicopter started flying close to the rafts. Plan A was that we would hold up at our regular campsite before the fire and just hope that we could get through the next day. Plan B was that we would pass our campground, our camping site. And it's by drawing that you even get a campsite along the river. So that would mean that we would pass the fire and float for miles before the next campsite and hope that a benevolent permit owner would allow us to pull in and pitch our tents. Most people are pretty good in an emergency situation. Plan C was something of my imagination. The helicopter had a Bambi bucket, and I just figured that some of us would just ride inside back to safety, and we'd have to leave the rafts or dock the rafts and hope they'd be there when we came back. And I wish I could tell you the first thing I did when I spotted the smoke was to pray, but I did not. I was going through Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. And later on that evening, the guides talked about we could always walk along the very narrow trail along the cliffs and make our way along the Salmon River. They also mentioned rattlesnakes hiding and sleeping inside the crevices of the rocks. And I wondered which was worse, to get my boots burned or to get bitten by a rattlesnake. I wish I could tell you that I slept well that night at the campsite, but the cliffs behind me are as steep as the ones behind our tents, but there was a trail along the cliffs, along the Salmon River. And I woke up and I stood outside talking to the stars and talking to God, and I thanked him for a warm, cozy tent, a sleeping bag, food, and safety, because I just felt like that helicopter was more like an angel sent by God to help us. And I just felt God's presence that evening when I finally was able to fall asleep. The next day, our rafts floated downstream, silent and quick, and I found myself thanking God for the aerial angels, the helicopters that dipped Bambi buckets 50 yards from our rafts and carried water skyward to put out the flames. And in that moment, I knew that God is my refuge and my strength, a very present help in need.